Alright everyone, welcome back to another Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes video with Fat Phil, and today I want to talk about some mistakes that I've been seeing. I kind of do one of these after every single live stream where I just kind of compile some of the thoughts I've seen from the live stream and make sure that I get it out there to the mass public who wasn't on there to hear the advice, or maybe some thoughts I've had after the live stream that I didn't get to mention during it. So let's get into some of the most common mistakes I'm seeing time and time again in Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes. Before we do that, massive shout out to the channel members. Thank you guys so much for your continued support. And the good friend, my friend Clokey, basically in the Hall of Fame right now, gifting channel memberships, joining the Wampa tier. Man, you are just crushing it. Thank you so much for your support. Special shout out now that I got your name right. So thank you again, man. I really appreciate it. Let's get into the video here and let's talk about some common mistakes. So this first one, I think players are not going to like me saying, but it's the truth. So many of you have ludicrous speeds on your Galactic Legends. Ludicrous speeds. And you don't take the time to think that how much speed do you actually need on a Galactic Legend. I want to go to Kylo Ren first as a good example. My Supreme Leader Kylo Ren is 550 speed. That's nothing crazy. It's acceptable, right? It's not amazing, right? But it's good speed. Now I've got an offense arrow up here, right? You see speed down here a little bit lower, right? You can kind of see that I'm trying to go for as much offense as humanly possible, obviously at Relic 7. If I made my Kylo just say 10 speed faster for the sake of argument, I'm sacrificing offense. But if he's 10 speed faster, what is that 10 speed actually doing? Like, is it actually helping me in any fights? And I'm going to tell you that 99% of the time, it won't make a difference. Maybe there's a 1% chance that you'll come across a fight where you need that 10 speed. But most of the time, when you're doing these fights, because you're not doing mirror matches, right? Like speed, it's not that it isn't important on Galactic Legend. It's not that it isn't important, but it's not as defining in a Galactic Legend matchup because most of us are not doing mirrors. Most of us are not doing matches where it's reliant that you're going first and getting all these things out there. So with Supreme Leader Kylo Ren, I mean, just one example, but I see it across a lot of them where, you know, if you miss a little bit of speed on your Jabba, is it the worst thing in the world? No, right? Like, you could make him a little bit slower if it means that he's getting other stats. And that's the one thing that you've got to keep in mind, that you don't need a ludicrous speed Galactic Legend if you're paying attention to the stats that matter a little bit more. The one character I don't have her up here, but Rey is a great example of this, where my Rey, she's modded for offense and health. The thing is, most players are like, she's one of the slower Galactic Legends. I think my Sith Eternal is even slower than her. But Rey, I don't need a crazy amount of speed on her because she's going to gain far more from having more health and far more from having more offense to be able to deal more damage. That the speed, especially because what players use to counter Rey a lot of times is Starkiller. You're going to be moving first anyway, so it doesn't matter. So I don't want to sit here and kind of say that you don't want speed on GLs, because that's not the advice I'm giving. But if it's I can put a little bit more speed on them, but I'm going to lose 16% health, or I'm going to lose offense percent, like, don't do that. You want to focus on those other stats, because 10 speed on a GL, not a big deal. But you throw that 10 speed, you take that 10 speed that you're going to put there and say you're going to throw it on your General Skywalker or Commander Luke or, you know, Echo, Maul, whoever. That makes a difference, right? To those characters where that could win them a fight much more often than a little bit of extra speed on GL. So just keep that in mind, guys. You don't need crazy speeds on your GLs. You just need to have good speed, you know, respectable speed, right? Don't just make them like super slow. You have respectable speed, but more importantly, it's the other stats that really make a difference. If you're interested, I did a video a while ago where I talked about how I'd mod each Galactic Legend, but I'm more than happy to go ahead, kind of, you know, renew that a little bit and show you some stuff. So if you're interested in that, let me know in the comments. Let's keep on moving down. We've got our King Wampa here. The mistake I made, so many people do not have this Omicron, and it's infuriating to me how many players I see who don't have this Omicron. This is pound for pound, this is the best Omicron, because like Savage Press is objectively better, right? Objectively, Savage Press is a better Omicron than Wampa. I say that all the time from an objective perspective. Yes, you can use Savage on offense, defense, you can use him with characters, right? It's much more useful. The problem is Savage isn't needed for anything. He doesn't help you with anything other than that Omicron. Where Wampa, our king, is required for Jedi Knight Luke, who you need for 2 Galactic Legends, and who's a great character as it is. So by investing in this Omicron, you're taking a character that you have to relic anyway and getting significantly more use out of him. So I'm sorry, I just have to put that here. Also, we're going to plug it in here that you've got to get Wampa to Relic 9. And I say you, I meant me. I misspoke. I'm not editing that out. We want to get Wampa to Relic 9. If you want to help that process, make sure you like and subscribe. Comment down below. We got to get this channel to 10,000 subscribers. We get to 10,000, Wampa hits Relic 9. All right, let's keep going. So you'll see here that I have a low gear Zori Bliss with an Omicron compared to no Omicron on my Tuskens with lower gear. And you need to know the difference between when a lower gear Omicron makes sense and when it doesn't. And I use these two just because they're ones I have in my own roster. But the way to think about it is that you need to understand how that character interacts. That Tusken Chieftain and Tusken Warrior are two very important characters to that Tusken team. So if you don't have them at high gear levels, their Omicron loses so much value because they're all about surviving, right? They just need to survive. They need to stack that defense. And if you're not able to survive an opening play, that Omicron's useless, right? It just isn't going to help you. Whereas with Zori, she's under stealth at the beginning of the match. So unless someone brings in a massive AoE that deletes her immediately, you're going to get crazy benefit from that, right? That Omicron is there and it helps at lower gear because she's under stealth, so it takes a lot more strategy to get around that. So just something to think about there of knowing the difference when a low gear Omicron makes sense and when it doesn't. Other examples of this I could think of are like Mara Jade's in Territory Wars. That's a great low gear Omicron because she just gets 100% turn meter right away. So there's very few counters that actually beat her, right? Like a Han Solo is going to be able to delete her out, but other teams are going to struggle. Whereas like the Geonosians with that Omicron, you want a little bit of gear on them because otherwise, it's not that they're not that difficult if they're not properly geared. Now, obviously, properly geared is going to be dependent on where you're competing at in the game. So another thing to keep in mind, but just know that difference, right? Because it is important. All right. I got asked this a lot when I was farming Leia, right? And I'm back to farming Leia now that we're done with Rey. But why didn't I gear my Chirpa and Wicket? And I threw Nisa in here as an example that those are the 3 Ewoks I'll get to relics when I farm Leia. But I'm not in a position to relic the other Ewoks. I'm not in a position to take advantage of these characters until I've got Nisa, right? It doesn't make sense to do it the other way around. And the gear that I would have put on Chirpa and Wicket, I could put onto a character like Rex or Scout Trooper who before, I can use them now, right? They're characters that are benefiting me now compared to just throwing it on Ewoks to make it look like I've made more progress in my journey guide. That, I'd be 13 of 16, but I'm really no closer to getting Leia. I just happen to complete 2 of the easier Rex. And that leads into this next one with, you've got to start with the high impact characters. I was looking at a roster last night that had Gamorrean Guard and Aura Singh and Mob Enforcer at relic levels for their Jabba the Hutt farm. But then they didn't have Coors Light Leia. And that's just insane to me. Coors Light Leia is a far better character than Mob Enforcer and Gamorrean Guard. Why? Same thing like your Jedi Knight Luke and Han Solo. When I did a while ago the order that you should gear up your Galactic Legend characters, and I said you want to start with Han and Jedi Knight Luke in that Jabba team because those are high impact characters that you can use immediately. So again, I just want to make sure that you guys are avoiding this mistake. Don't just go in and do the easy requirements because it looks cool, right? Do the requirements that are actually going to help you along the way. Do the characters that you're going to be able to use as a team building into those Galactic Legends, You will be so much better off being able to utilize those Galactic Legend requirements before you're actually before you actually get the GL if you did the right characters. So that's these ones, and there's one other massive mistake that I'm seeing kind of pervasively throughout the game right now, and it kind of pertains to a lot of things, but I'm going to talk about it primarily with ships. And that's countering, obviously Leviathan's the big one right now. And a lot of players who trash talk Inquisitors, trash talk Thrawn because you got to farm the Phoenix or whatever, especially the Inquisitors, so they trash talk the Inquisitors. I don't think people recognize how important Inquisitors are in fleets right now. They are the off-meta counters to Leviathan. You need the Scythe and TIE Interceptor to be able to properly counter Leviathan. You need them, right? You have to have those to counter Leviathan with the Empire fleet, right? This fleet right here will take out Leviathans all the time. Then you also got the Marauder, the Bad Batch ship. This is also beating your Like, this is also beating Leviathan. Again, I think they're both very good. They each have their drawbacks and whatnot of, what you're pulling apart, because you can see here your Executor counter, you need the TIE Interceptor and then obviously TIE Defender here. And then for Profundity, you need the Scythe, right? You kind of split those Empire fleets and make two of them, where the Leviathan counter kind of eats both of them. So you can use this one, and that way you still have these for that, like off meta. But so many players I see do a couple of things. One, they never invested in Inquisitors at the late game, which you should have. They're just that important. But the second part of this is they don't learn these counters. They still try and do Executor mirror matches, right? They still try and do the Executor mirror match, right? They still will do Profundity mirror matches or Leviathan mirror matches and not learn how to do these counters. And it's so imperative you learn how to do counters like this. And I mean, this goes for all things, right? The Lord Vader Bounty Hunters, Starkiller versus Rey, right? Any of those off-meta things that you're like, does it work? You've got to learn how to do it. It's just nice to have in your back pocket because you may never know when you need it. So I wanted to show this because I know even in my fleet arena, I'm seeing it almost every day now where guys are having to do mirror matches instead of having, one, they didn't farm the ships, which is a mistake in itself, but really they're just not learning the counters to successfully get the most out of their fleets. So I wanted to bring this to everybody's attention, right? It is a huge mistake that so many players, I think, are just not learning. Like, they almost, ignorance is bliss. Oh, I don't know it, so I'm not going to use it. Like, learn it. It's that much better. So I want to leave it here. You let me know your thoughts down below. I love all you. May the Force be with you, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Cheers.